Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before I get started, I'd just like to inform you I'm splitting my time with my very eloquent and very passionate advocate colleague from Megantic, L'Arabe. It was all a scam. The carbon tax was sold, and it should have been slapped on with a bumper sticker that said, "Not as advertised." The Liberals sold it in a few ways. First, they said that more Canadians would get back into their pockets these phony rebates than what they'd have to pay into it. The public budgeting officer proved that that was false, and in his report, he made it very clear that more Canadians would pay into this scam than what they get back in these phony rebates. The Liberals also said they would solve climate change, that they would make everything better. They would make emissions come down. Well, that was false too, proven by their own public budgeting officer, as emissions keep going up and they haven't hit a single emission reduction target that they set for themselves. This is why they should have thrown on that bumper sticker that said, "Not as advertised." This was a scam from day one, and it's coming out to light now. These carbon taxes and this carbon tax scam is also very, very discriminatory, because every province feels it differently, and every province gets charged differently. For us Albertans, it's yet another attack on our province by this Prime Minister. Not only has he repeatedly kicked down Albertans, he's also made sure that Alberta does not become the prosperous province that it once used to be. By introducing Bill C-69, supported by the NDP, these Liberals and NDP made sure that no good pipeline projects would be able to be completed in this country. Madam Speaker, you know a great way to lower emissions and stop having our product going on trains and on trucks? Pipelines. They're safer, they're more secure, and they'll bring down emissions. Not only that, we can bring home more powerful paychecks for our Canadians. We can bring jobs, we can bring prosperity, and a better economy. We see today the world wants Canadian energy, clean, responsible, low-carbon energy. But it's these policies and this radical left ideology of this Liberal NDP government that's not letting the world get this low-carbon, clean, responsible Canadian energy. They've repeatedly blocked projects, and what is the result of all of that? We see dictatorships around the world making profits. We see emissions going up. Just as an example, Germany's Chancellor came to Canada just recently within the last year, literally asking for our liquid natural gas. They were willing to take it immediately. This Prime Minister had more than 15 good LNG projects on his desk when he became Prime Minister. One isn't completed yet. And when he turned around, Germany's Chancellor, where did Germany go? They turned around to Qatar, that has less human rights regulations, less environment regulations than Canada does, and they turned around and got their LNG from Qatar, when they could have gotten it from Canada, that has the highest human rights standards and environmental standards when it comes to producing our clean, responsible energy. What is the result of all of this? Well, we saw just last winter, heating costs doubled. Heating costs doubled. We hear stories of seniors that are having to turn down the heat in their home and literally make do with blankets during the wintertime. Because after 8 years of this irresponsible NDP Liberal government, things are just way more expensive than they've ever been before. These costs that have driven up everything have made it so now that 1.5 million Canadians are visiting a food bank in a single month. I met a mother just a month ago, and she's a single mom of 3 kids. Liberal inflation drove up the interest rates, and now Canada is most at risk in the G7 for a mortgage default crisis. This also drove up rents and everything else. And when I met this single mother, she told me the reality of her situation. She is a single mom of 3 kids. Her rent went up by $600. So what did she have to do? She couldn't afford to eat, and she couldn't afford to feed her kids and heat her home at the same time. So what did she do? She had to move in with her ex-husband, her abusive ex-husband once again, and live in that same situation because she couldn't afford to feed her kids anymore. The Liberal NDP government refuses to acknowledge that their carbon tax has real consequences. Because when you're taxing the farmer who's making the food, and you're taxing the trucker who ships the food, and you're taxing the manufacturer and the people who are storing the food, that tax ultimately goes on the Canadian that is going to be buying the food. And that's the sad reality after 8 years of this incompetent Liberal NDP government. Canadians' disposable income is getting smaller and smaller due to these deficits that this Liberal government continues to drive up. And not only just that, they've increased the costs of a house by doubling the amount mortgages, rents, and the amount it takes to save up for a down payment on a house, but they're also increasing the costs that are inside the house, like heat, like gas, like grocery costs. All of these have gone up, and they're all inflationary, which was proven by the Governor of the Bank of Canada. Canada could be the world leader today in clean, responsible energy that could actually bring down global emissions, not just emissions in Canada. We could provide for the whole world. We have enough. We just have a Liberal NDP government that is the ultimate gatekeeper of this success of Canada. There are many marginalized communities that work in the energy sector. And what this Liberal NDP woke government does is, due to their crazy left ideology, they've stopped those marginalized communities from being able to be successful here in Canada. Over and over again, we see authoritative, crazy left ideology out-trump common sense. But Madam Speaker, I will tell you, common sense will be restored once again in this country when the member from Carleton becomes Prime Minister of this country. We're going to greenlight green projects. Canada is 64th in the world for permitting. We're going to make sure that good projects like hydro, like tidal, like nuclear will actually be able to be built in this country. We'll get pipelines built so we can bring down world emissions. We're going to make sure that our First Nations and Indigenous brothers and sisters will also become prosperous once again under a conservative government when we partner with them and make sure that we get Canada back to the successful state it needs to be once again. We're going to scrap this failed carbon tax so the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating will come down. We're going to make sure that we get more energy produced in this country so that we can lower the cost of energy. That's what the world needs, that's what Canada needs, and that's what Canadian needs. And when the member from Carleton becomes Prime Minister, we're going to bring those things home. We're going to bring home powerful paychecks, and we're going to bring home lower costs for our people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.